It's the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. It's the Mike Missanelli podcast. It is episode 42. I can't believe we're at episode 42 already. Sponsored by the great people at BetRivers. Don't forget to download the BetRivers app. You got some big games coming up this weekend. That BetRivers app down on your phone. Make some plays. I didn't do so well last week, but I'm getting ready to rebound. This podcast is going to be really special. I've been waiting for this for a really long time. It's so special that we're only going to do the interview with our next guest, and of course, has been getting Twitter acclaim when I advertise this. He's a guy that I've known forever. We're like brothers. We worked in the business for a really long time. We did a show together, which a lot of people forget. It was like one of the most memorable, successful shows of all time on WIP radio station. He, of course, is the great cuz, Anthony Gargano. What's up, brother?
Hey, what's going on, my brother? Miss you, buddy. That's my main man. Mikey
miss you. Miss you too, man. And listen, this is a great time to talk. Listen, I want to talk about sports, life as well. But let's start out right now with where we are as a Philadelphia sports city. And of course, the Eagles going into the playoffs, they get the bye, and they get the most favorable. I gotta be honest, the most favorable matchup they could get is the matchup they got. The Giants look really good. But it's really hard for me to believe that a team who's really not that great is going to play great 2 weeks in a row, especially on the road, and especially as a 7.5 underdog. So how are you looking at this Eagle-Giant matchup coming up this Saturday?
Yeah, I agree, Mikey. And here's the other thing. I think that Giants win gets distorted a little bit because of Minnesota's defense. Minnesota's defense is not good, all right? And the Giants, they had their way. I mean, that's not a down the field passing team, and they were able to go down the field on them. They had to play 7 guys in the box, so they had to go to the light box, and the Giants controlled the clock. They controlled possessions. They did whatever they could, and the Vikings could do nothing. It was amazing. So I think, are the Giants better than when they lost to the Eagles 48-22? Yeah, they're healthier. They got some players back along both the offensive and defensive line. But I'm with you, brother. I mean, look, Giants, good team, great coach in Dable. They're not ready to win. They're not ready to go to an NFC Championship game. And I think the Eagles are good. I think the Eagles have been undersold all year long.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the line at 7.5 really got my attention right away because
the line's telling what you
think. No, really, people in Vegas are smart, and I thought, okay, the Giants are going to get some acclaim for the way they played. It would be 4.5, 5. When it started at 7.5, I go, well, this is like ridiculous. So here's the thing: the Giants, there are 2 factors in this game, and obviously it's the health of the quarterback and the health of the right tackle. And on the other side, the Giants do a couple of things well that the Eagles don't do well. They rush the football, and the quarterback rushes the football, and the Eagles have been susceptible to both of those things this year. So you got to look at the matchup and see which she's going to win out here. So how can like the average fan look at it and go, the Giants are really hot. They do a couple of things the Eagles don't stop.
Yeah, except you know what? Ever since the Eagles got Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, I thought they really buttoned up their run defense. They play a 5-man front, and the kid's back too. I mean, you got the big boy coming back too. So that rotation is so deep with their defensive tackles. So I think they're well handled. I think personnel-wise, they're in a good place defensively. My only worry comes with Jonathan Gannon, and I think if you're going to play the Giants, you got to play press coverage, and you got to make Daniel Jones beat you with his arm. You got to spy him because you saw what he did to the Vikings. He can get yards with his legs. He can make big plays with his legs. So you know what? Look at their receivers. Hodgins, Slayton. Did they strike Richie James? Did they strike fear? That's where you got the corners to do it. You got 2 corners that are excellent, right? And Slay and Bradbury. This is where Gannon, I got to tell you, we're going to learn a lot about Gannon. Now, he may get a job, but as a coordinator, he has to play press. You got to crowd the line of scrimmage against that team.
Yeah, he's not a press guy though, and that's the thing that people worry about, and especially because their top corner has really been lackluster lately. I don't know what happened to Darius Slay, but he hasn't been great lately. So, uh,
I think it's the
did
safety play because I mean
yeah?
when they lost CJ, right? That's a big loss for him, and I think he was hurt by the safety play in front of him. I think that one play was on the kid, and it affected him. So you're going to get Chauncey, back. He's going to be playing the slot corner, I think, because Maddox is going to play. So I think he'll be there. But I think Slay will be all right. I'm not as worried about Slay in this situation where I'm more worried about Barkley. And I'm worried about them giving up cheap yards because, Dable's a great coach, great offensive mind. And what he's going to try to do is get cheap yards, right? He's going to try to get first downs. He knows they have very little big strike capability. So he's going to want to hold on to the football, shorten the game. That's what he's going to want to do. And if you're Gannon, you can't have a situation like they did against the Saints, where the Saints held the ball for 9 minutes in the first quarter. That Eagles offense is good, even with Jalen being hurt. They're a good team, a good offense. They got to get on the field.
They are, but let's look at it fairly. 2 games of Minshew, where I mean, he played the one game they scored a lot of points. The next game he was garbage, and then Jalen comes back and he was obviously hurting. The only factor for me is can they do the same things with that quarterback that they've done all year, and will he be willing to do it?
Yeah, I think he'll be willing to. Whether you want to do it or not is another story. Because I mean, Mikey, like one of the things that's so hard to stop when they were rolling, right? And this is the only thing that scares me as far as the postseason run. Earlier in the season, they were a machine, man. They were rolling. They were scoring at will. When they beat the Giants 48, I mean, that team, they put up 48 on them.
Mhm.
They were rolling. And one of the reasons why is the RPRs, not just the RPO, but the run pass run options with Jalen makes them so
Mhm.
hard to stop, right? Because he runs like a running back. And if not, he pulls it back. He can go to Sanders, or he's got two great receivers and a great tight end. So that offense is tremendous. Now, to your point, I just don't know how the Sirianni said today that he felt like he should go through the whole practice. So that was a good sign. But to your point, I don't want to risk running a lot of those RPRs. I got to play San Francisco, and I'm going to
Yeah,
need
that's
him
what I'm
against
saying. Will they call the game the same way with abandon because he's so much like when he carries the football, he's so much a part of their success.
Yeah, and I think you got to play it by feel. I think you got to go out, you got to see what he's got. You got to test the shoulder, test the arm, see what you got. But I know you got to live to play San Francisco, but I got one eye on the Niners too. I mean, I have to have Jalen. I got to have him because if he's hurt, there's no chance.
Yeah,
Minshew's
I
not Foles.
I totally agree. I think that they'll be able to handle the Giants, and whether they're going to be handled by 7.5 points, I really the San Francisco game is the one that's looming. So yeah, I agree. So try you're doing sports talk radio every day. Give me the gauge of the city right now and how fans feel about it, because it's funny because fans in Philadelphia just want to take the littlest excuse to feel down about stuff. And so the first shoe that fell was the Jalen injured. And then it was the Lane Johnson thing. And it was Miles Sanders is banged up. And it was this and that, and Maddox and the whole bit. And then on top of that, the Giants look really good. How do you gauge the fans right now, what they feel about it?
You know what's interesting? So I think they're a little more in belief. I agree with you. There is a sector of the fan base, and I do think it's generational. I think the older fan is more of the fatalistic fan, and the younger fan has more of the unbridled, and I'm going to lay it on the line. I think they're good. Super Bowl. This is going on. And listen, it's a product of what you experience, right? I mean, the younger fan, they know it's Super Bowl. The older fan goes, we ain't seen anything, right? So we're out quicker. So I think it's generational. And I find, and you know better than anybody, you built 97.5 The Fanatic. You know that's always going to skew younger.
Yeah, I totally agree. But it's funny because I look at social media during the game, and I do a post game show, and it's like the least little thing. It's like, oh my God, look at Daniel Jones now. There's no way they can stop him because they can't stop running quarterbacks. It's like they want to talk themselves into fatalism before fatalism even creeps around the corner.
Yeah, well, we've always spelled fatalism with a PH. Man, that's always been, kind of who we are. It's almost DNA. Goes back to the Quakers. In this. Listen, they're 14-3. It was a weird season because there was not the rah rah. Like I remember. Oh, we played the anniversary of the Rams championship game. And remember when we were doing the show back at WIP and it was, the early parts of Andy and they were going to championship games. The fans were wild.
Yeah.
Now, is that product of that we had never gotten a Super Bowl and now we have one? But it was met with a lot more fanfare. I agree with you. I think people are more guarded now.
Yeah, they're definitely guarded. And what I would say to them is, they don't be guarded against this team. I mean, they're better than this team coming in. So whether they cover or not, they're going to advance, and then you worry about San Francisco
Yeah,
as
they're a
it comes
whole
down the
other.
line.
They're a monster. So they're a
Yeah,
whole other bit. If you want to worry, you worry next week because that
yeah.
team's good.
Exactly. All right, let's talk a little bit about what I really want to talk about because I've done a couple of interviews. That did one with Angelo, and I like to go back in time on how this whole thing that we were involved in evolved, and and you came in like kind of in the in between time of Angelo and I, but a lot of people don't remember that we worked together for and had a really successful show. It's funny because it was brief, but it was one of the most successful shows they ever had at WIP. And then like things like I ventured off into various other areas. But like the backstory of you in the radio is really interesting to me because we were both in the same boat. We both came into the business as journalists and writers, and we were both passionate about writing, and all of a sudden this phenomenon of sports talk radio comes in, and I went to it because I was kind of frustrated with newspaper work, and I had a law degree, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I wanted to try something different. You got into it in a different way. You were really a serious writer, journalist, and you wanted to be that. And all of a sudden, sports talk radio beckons for you, and and we had a conversation about it. I mean, it's funny we were
You and
talking
I went
about.
out for drinks. I
Yeah, we
asked you
went
to
out.
go
We
out for
went out for
drinks.
drinks, and
A
it
little
was
counsel.
at Bennigan's there in City Line Avenue. And I remember you telling me that you had gotten an offer to go into sports talk radio, so we sat there and we had drinks. Like, what do you remember about that conversation and why you finally made that move?
Well, I remember asking you like, "Hey, sit down. I got to pick your brain about this whole thing," and it was bothersome because I didn't want to go. I mean, quite frankly, I loved what I did. I brought it up today because they were playing New York, and I started at the New York Post, and my first big job, and I loved that job. I loved traveling. I traveled 300 nights a year. I'd sit down. I'd write 5,000 word, Sunday pieces. Like I love that. And then I come to the Inquirer because I really wanted to be a foreign correspondent, and of course, one of our mutual friends, Robert Rosenthal, who was the editor of the Inquirer, who was an amazing foreign correspondent himself. He was captured. He was a great journalist.
Yeah, he
And
really was. I loved him.
he was the best, Rosie, wasn't he, man? Oh
Yeah.
my God. So
He
I'd
was a
gone for
pretty
the
good softball player. You would never think it. Like when I saw him, it's funny because the Inquirer had a softball team that's before you got there, and we were good. We had a really good team. Sal Powell's on that team, and all of a sudden, like Rosie shows up at like workouts on a Saturday, and I go, look at this guy. He was dressed like he was like going to work. He had like an ascot on, and the whole bit, and right. And I'm an old ball player. And I go, what is this guy? And he's just roping line drives. I go, wow, this guy can really play. But anyway, I got off the point. He was a serious journalist.
He was amazing. I had gone to the New York. I had an interview with the New York Times, and they said that before they could hire me, that I had to be cleansed because you know the difference. Not a lot of people understand the difference between a broadsheet and a tabloid. All a tabloid is it like the Daily News, where you open it. Broadsheet is the big fold paper, and so I had to go and get cleansed. And so, I go and get the job at the Inquirer, come home, and I love Philadelphia. Like, as much as I love New York, and like, it's interesting, the contemporaries are all like, I go, I'm an idiot because I should have stayed, and I would be like Schefter, with millions of followers and all this other stuff. I mean, Shefty was, buddy of mine back then, and we covered the NFL together. All my baseball guys, Buster Olney, Kenny Rosenthal. I mean, these are all guys I covered ball with. Woj, I was close with Woj. And so, but I love Philadelphia. Philadelphia, Philadelphia, Philadelphia. I love Philly. Philly, 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 loved it. And I want to come home. And so, anyway, I'm at the Inquirer, and Tom Bigby, I do a fill in with Glenn, and Jody was off, and I do the fill in for the week, and they offered a job. And I was like, oh, man. And of course, everybody's like, you got to take it, got to take it, got to take it. And, it's what the newspapers get paid dirt anyway. You know that.
Yeah.
And by the way,
we
they
were all
so,
like, it's funny because we all loved the printed word. We all grew up and worshipped it, and the Inquirer made us feel like we should worship it. And yet we were looking at our paychecks going, oh man, we got to make some money in this world, right?
Yeah, exactly. And no, that's exactly right. And that's what you said. You said to me, and I remember the conversation, and you said, listen, the writing piece of it will never go away. Like, that's a skill that you have, and you'll always be able to write. You may not always be able to make this kind of paycheck when you're getting into, comparatively speaking. I mean, it was not compared to newspapers where it really is nothing. And you're like, listen, hold on to the skill, and worst comes to worst, you'll always be able to write. It's not like, you try it and you thought it would work. You said, I think you
Yeah,
got the
I
demeanor for
thought
it.
you were really perfect for it to come in. And I really wanted you to come in because let's face it, you were Philadelphia, and that's what Sports Talk Radio was. And Sports Talk Radio, when it's at best, is just very regional, and people live their lives through it. So, like, I don't think it works on a national level as much as it works on a local level. But before you even got to the Post. And like I always say, the cover and the hardest job for anybody to cover is a baseball beat, and you did that. But you started, like, it's funny because I just tell the story of how we met in the first place, and then I'll go through your career because you went to Chicago before you went to New York.
Yeah. So I was like I think we're very similar. Like, we grew up, loved sports, loved playing sports, athletes, loved the games, and we both loved the word. And so I always knew I wanted to do it. And you had to build, if you remember, you had to build a clip file. And a clip file is basically bylines. And it was back then, I used to spend hundreds of dollars on copies, like mimeographs back then. That's what it was. And you would put together your clip file, and you're constantly updating your clip file. So I would freelance, and I would write for anybody. I call people. I would
Yeah, you went to
editors.
Temple, and at that point,
Yeah.
like, it's different than it is now because anybody can start a blog and like, but you had
No.
to really earn a job
Yeah,
somewhere.
there was you remember this thing? There was a book. It was the Associated Press APSE book
Yeah,
of sports editors, right? And it
yeah,
listed
oh
their
yeah.
phone numbers, right? And I would go through the phone numbers and call. Hey, would you want me to cover a game? So anyway, long story short, I'm covering a basketball game, the A10 tournament, and I was covering it for a paper in Massachusetts. And back then, this is pre-internet. You would send your story through these toggles. What was it called? The
It was a
couplers.
Radio Shack little computer that had a screen that was 2x6, 2 inches by 6. So your copy would actually print out on the screen, but you couldn't read the entire copy. It was like you were doing 3 lines at a time. And it was, this is what, like, they first came into the electronic era. And you would send your story back by these couplers that you would hook up to a telephone. And I was confused by it. So much less somebody coming in knew That was my regular tool, and I still didn't know how to do it. And you're covering the NCAA tournament at the Meadowlands, and you're completely clueless on how to send your story back to
Like, you
people
got
who
extra
are
colors.
expecting.
So I go and introduce myself to him. And Mike Missanelli. And he goes, yeah. I go, I'm Anthony. I'm from Philly. Blah, blah, blah. Help me out, man. I got to send my
You got
story.
the story written, but you don't know how to send it, and you're on
No
deadline,
idea.
and you're
Yeah.
waiting, and they're waiting for
And
your
I'm
story.
panicked.
And just like you go, okay, I'll take the job. But you wouldn't like to think of the okay, then how will I file the story? It was okay for you to just have the job. That was good enough. You'll figure it out later, right? That was the beauty of you.
That's the
so,
life. Listen,
so
you're doing that with wine.
yes, exactly. So you okay, you wrote the story. You cover the game, you got all the steps down. You cover the game, you write the story, but you don't know how to send. It's beautiful.
No
And so
idea.
I'm there. I go, okay, man. This is what time's your deadline? You go, I go, here. You put your phone here. So that's the first time we met. Now you were like back then, you were tattooed up, you were ear ringed up, you were but you were a Philly guy. And I go, hey, I want to help this dude because he's really excited to do it and earnest about it, and that's what
Yes.
impressed
Yeah.
me about you. So that's how we first met. So then you take a job in Chicago, and one of the because you go you're a fish out of water. You're out of Philly, but you go to Chicago and you move into a place. And I know your family history. I know how lovely your mom was, and how you were her little Anthony and a whole bit. And you go to Chicago and you just set up shop. You buy a beanbag chair. That's all you freaking had. You were like De Niro in Heat. I mean, excuse me, Val. He had this apartment. He had one beanbag chair. That's what you had
I mean,
in
TV on the
Chicago.
floor.
You go to Chicago and you start your journalistic career, and it's beautiful. And somehow you get an interview with Michael Jordan. Now, see, only you could do that because you
Well,
got
this
to
was
get.
later. This was later.
Okay, all
And
right, this is
Jordan
later.
was with the Post. So I had befriended Jordan. Well, he liked me.
Oh, okay. So we were in
I didn't
Chicago.
befriend, like,
You befriended him.
yeah, like he liked, like when I was
Okay.
in Chicago, he used to get a kick out of me because I'd walk in, oh
Yeah,
Mike, you know.
yeah, because you would wear a tank top and you were
Yeah.
tatted up and you had earrings all over the place, and he never saw anything like that. I mean, you're a Philly hardcore guy, so you walk in, so he attaches with you. So years later, you go to the Post, and you go, okay, I got to deal with Jordan, and you were going to do a feature story on Michael Jordan. This is like an ultimate assignment, and it's a big time thing because you're at the New York Post. Now, as far as I can remember the story, you show up. Jordan was a big time golfer, which meant he was a member of exclusive clubs, and somehow he agrees to do a story with you. It's
They
a
just said
beautiful
meet me.
story.
It was really easy. It was just meet me at the at the golf club. And I go to the golf club. It's it's exclusive, the whole thing. Now I'm not a golfer, as you know, and it was hot. It's Chicago, right? So it's summertime, whatever it was, and it's hot. And I figured, well, I'm gonna ride around with him. I wasn't gonna play.
It's
I'm
a
riding
perfect
around.
way to do a story. You're riding around in a golf cart with him. You
So I
you
got a
can really
tank
get to
top.
know a guy on a golf course, and here you are riding in a golf cart with Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
It's
And then
perfect.
of course I was wearing a tank top.
You had a tank top.
So I had to go
You
buy.
had a tank top and shorts as you walk into this
Yeah,
exclusive
so
club.
I had
But
he
first
looks
of all,
at me,
he takes a look at you and says what?
go buy a shirt. He starts laughing, right? And so he starts laughing, and there was a bunch of dudes and whatever. I don't mind being like, I'm just like whatever. I'm like, oh, it's cool. So he goes, cool, you gotta go buy a shirt. In the pro shop and get a shirt. So I go into the pro shop, and I expense that shirt. The shirt was like two and a quarter for
Of
this golf
course.
shirt.
Of course it was.
So I put on my Amex card that goes to the Post, and I go, by the way, so my boss was ripping me, like, what do you mean you wore a tank top, dude? Like, don't you know better? I was like, I don't know. It's hot out, or whatever. This is like, I'm also 24 years old, so 25 maybe. I mean, I'm young,
Oh,
so
yeah, that is such a beautiful story.
you know,
But see, a guy like Jordan like looks at that and goes, like, you're not the average douchebag who wants to interview me, right? You're like you have a soul to you, so you probably got a really good story out of that.
Yeah, I wrote it. It was great. I loved it. I used to love that stuff. Like just kind of, I sat with Pat Riley at his house. I did, man, Dan Marino. I all those people at that time, whoever the big names were, I got to go sit down with them. And
Yeah, that was the
Barry
best
Sanders, I
part.
followed Barry Sanders
Yeah,
around.
that was
The,
absolutely the best part of journalism, where you could spend
oh
some
my God,
time
you get
with the
such a
subject,
window.
and you had the freedom to do it.
Yeah,
And now it's not the same, but they would say, "Hey, yeah, it's been a couple days, and get to know a guy," and that's what
especially
made.
the Post. Our
Yeah,
budget, our sports travel budget was like $9 million a year for the whole staff.
that's
But
amazing.
I mean, I would travel everywhere. I would go. I mean, I'll never forget. He goes, "Where?" My boss goes, "Where you at?" I go, "I'm in L.A." Oh yeah. He goes, "Where you go to Seattle? I want to read about Dick Griffey." All right.
Yeah, it was great. As the newspapers had money to burn back then, I tell people stories they can't believe it. They go, I remember I tell the story all the time. Kenny Anderson played for Georgia Tech from the Bronx, and he was like the national sensation. And they tell me like the night before, go to Atlanta tomorrow. Do a feature on Kenny Anderson. And we'll, like, you hop on a plane at 7 o'clock. You get to Atlanta. You meet with Kenny Anderson for a couple hours, and you ferret out as much information as you can. You get back on the plane. You write a feature story, and you had 2 days to get it going, and it was fantastic. It was the best of journalism because you spend some time to get to know somebody and really put some thought into a piece that you think that people are really going to like. That was the
So
essence of what I liked about journalism.
you're so right. So it's funny. I mentioned. So I'm trying to get Eli Manning for the show, right? So I when Peyton was at Tennessee, I go to Knoxville for I was there for 2 weeks. I stayed at this Marriott Suites right in Knoxville, and I show up right. I talk to Peyton, and he goes, "Wow, you're from New York?" I go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I go, "I want to hang out with you for like a week or two." All right, like I went to class with him. I did like
Yeah,
literally.
see,
I
that's the
hung out.
best.
It was awesome. And then the following year, I'm doing a story on him at camp. He's at Colts camp. So I come walking up, and the good thing about having the earrings, well, you stood out, right? Like I
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
trying to do that, but it worked. And Peyton goes, "Anthony, what's going on, man?" He goes, "What are you doing here?" I go, "I'm here to see you. I'm going to do a story on you." He was a rookie for the Colts.
Yeah.
He was the best. Like
Yeah.
then Archie, I mean, they were great people. I love those people.
Yeah, you had that effect on people where they remembered you. It was great, and so now you get to the post, and they give you again this baseball beat. I'm so envious of people who've done it, and you did it at such a high level. Like the Mets, covering the Mets is one thing, covering the baseball team is one thing. You covered that team that was fucking crazy. And you're
Yeah.
not talking Darryl Strawberry era New York Mets, Bobby Valentine craziness, Todd, the catcher,
Hundley,
whatever, Todd
Todd Hundley,
Hundley, and
Dwight
John
Gooden.
Franco and Gooden and all those guys, and that was like, it was like controversy. Like, it's one thing being a beat writer; it's another thing when there are stories on top of stories, which would you were covering with the Mets at that time. So how did you handle that?
I was pretty young, and I probably didn't handle it the right way. If I'm going to be truthful, when it comes to the journalistic standpoint, I almost viewed it. This is not good, but I'm going to tell the story. I viewed it almost like I don't want to be a rat, right? Like I didn't
Yeah,
want
well,
to.
because listen, this is in your nature. Like the last, like you grew up in South Philly, and it's ingrained. You don't be a rat. And so here you are covering a team where there's cocaine abuse and all this other stuff that you know about, right? But you couldn't betray the trust of guys that were giving you information on the other side. This is why it's so difficult to be a beat writer.
Yeah, I didn't like that piece of it. I loved. My favorite was doing features and stuff like that. That was what my calling was better, where I would get to know people. The You're right. I mean, that Mets team was a mess, and I did know about a lot of stuff. I remember my boss saying to me, he's like, his name was Greg Gallo. He was like this. epitome of a New York newspaper man. Think Spider-Man. Who's the character? Mr. from Spider-Man. Who's the
I don't
the
even know. You got
newspaper editor?
I'm not a
You know,
Spidey
Dutch.
guy.
Yeah, I know. But he
Darren,
was
what's his name?
Mr.
Darren.
Jameson. Mr.
Darren, our
Jameson.
producer, Darren. The newspaper guy.
Oh, J. Jonah Jameson.
Yes.
J. Joe Jameson.
Jonah
All right.
So,
Jameson.
it's like this, yeah, what are you doing, kid? In fact, he would read my copy and he'd go, take your pink panties off when you write. What's the matter with your adjectives? You got to go over with the adjectives again. And so he was the post. Like, they wanted to blare headlines. And he's like, I know you know stuff going on with the Mets, with the Mutts. He goes, you better write it. And I go, I'm giving exactly what was going on. I mean, I was in the middle of it. Like, I mean, oh my God.
See, here's the thing. A guy like you, you understand that even though Darryl Strawberry and Dwight Gooden have demons, they're cool. And you respect cool, right? So that was one of the whole things. Now, conversely, Bobby Valentine was uncool.
Correct.
And so therefore you like looked at him with the jaundiced eye as the manager. So tell the story about you almost coming to blows with him. I always tell this story, like if I covered Nick Saban, I'd be in a fight with that motherfucker every day, right? And so I assume the same thing was with you and Valentine.
Yeah, he was a manipulative guy, very manipulative. And I'll never forget, there was a guy, I loved him, Tom McCraw. Old time baseball guy,
I
right?
remember that guy. Yeah.
Tommy Mack.
Yeah.
Tommy
Mack,
Mack was
left-handed
Dallas
hitter.
Green,
Yeah,
he was
coach.
was Dallas Green's hitting coach, and I love Tommy Mack. I got to be honest, I loved him. Like I go around. I love those old baseball dudes, right? Like Charlie's. One of the reasons why I hope Charlie and I get along so well is like he just is. There's an innocence about those guys. Like they just love the game. They love baseball. So. Bobby V fires Tommy Mack and says, I caught him drinking moonshine on the bench and this and that. I mean, dude, he's got to, they basically insinuated that he had a drinking problem or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, first of all, why are you putting that out there? Like, you don't need to do that. And like, we got into a beef and Tommy hooks up with the Astros. So Tom's in town and, I hear the whole story. So I tell McCraw, I tell Tommy. So Bobby V goes around and goes, did anybody speak to Tom McCraw today? And I went, yep, I did. And then he looks at me and then went, what did you say to him? I said, I told him what you said. I said, it's my main man. What do you mean he's your friend? There's no friends in this business. I go, I love Tom McCraw. We got in this argument. We go outside. Oh, so then who was Franco says, cuz there's a Franklin in it if you dot his I.
And that's John Franco, who is Italian and New York Italian. And so you obviously you're bonded with him. So they hated Valentine, the whole team. Which is not uncommon for a guy like that. And so he offers you 100 to dot his I, and you actually like square up with Valentine.
Oh, we were like, I'll fight you. Like, what do we do? Like, I'm afraid of you, right? So when we go outside and we're in Shea Stadium, outside the clubhouse, screaming at each other. Who walks by? Craig Biggio and Ken Caminiti. Remember those dudes?
From the Astros,
yeah. And they walk by, they're laughing and this and that. So later on, I walk in the Astros clubhouse, and they're going, it's the guy who almost knocked out Bobby V.
Because he was universal. Yeah, everybody hated Valentine.
And then, what's funny? Because then Tommy Lasorda said, Anthony, I like Tommy a lot, right? Yeah. And Tommy was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, the Bobby V's one of us. Like, you can't go at him like that.
Yeah.
And I went, well, he was being disrespectful, whatever.
Yeah.
But back then, Mikey, it was a different time too. Like those guys, those baseball writers and all, who was fighting, rolling on the ground. It was insanity.
Yeah.
I mean, how about them guys?
Yeah.
How about Bill Connell and those guys? They were fist fighting in the elevator and all.
Yeah, well, yeah, he punched Harry Callis out in the
I mean,
elevator.
what
Yeah, no,
unbelievable.
that's why I say like baseball. It's why you should write a book about just covering baseball. It's like it's amazing, it's an amazing thing. So, like, just the last question, like, how you have a beef with Valentine, you got to cover him, and and now writers today tread so gingerly around that because they got to have access, and the whole thing has changed. But how did you approach that after that with having to cover the guy?
Yeah, but luckily, in fairness, I mean, I got off the beat pretty quickly after that because they were so bad. And my boss said to me, "Hey, I want you to write features and cover
Okay.
boxing." That's when I got close with Tyson,
Uh-huh.
and I went to pet the tiger. I was at the house in Vegas.
Yeah, yes.
Anthony,
Yeah,
Anthony.
yeah, you got close with Tyson.
I love Tyson. Tyson was
Yeah,
awesome.
that's great.
Um,
Yeah, you're the way
but
of
it was,
bond.
but I didn't go. Bobby V was like, whatever, dude. Like we would be cold. In fairness, today, like I couldn't do that. That job today is hard, man. Just all the social media. You're not writing like what we did was a meld between reporting and writing,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
like the writing aspect better. And today,
Yeah,
all
no,
they do is report.
you absolutely you did. Uh, let's move ahead to Sports Talk Radio because we both have had long careers in it, and you're still doing it, and we took different approaches to do Sports Talk Radio. But I always look at the show that we did together, which was kind of like happened by accident. And if you look, the history of it was that really wanted you to come to WPEN from WIP, and finally you did. And I was doing evening drive, and at the time, I think I was still working with Steve Fredericks, and they changed it up and tried to put me with Eskin. And then when they realized it wasn't working out because we hated each other, and I just couldn't. And you knew every day that I was suffering with it because I just couldn't understand like how the guy wouldn't understand the concept of how to do a show as a team instead of an individual. And finally, they
Wait,
said,
wait, I
"Okay,
gotta tell the one story. It's the
all right,
best.
go."
I, I I would walk in because we did a crossover or whatever, right? But then I
Yeah.
would walk in, I'd hang around, and I would talk to Mike. And I'd walk in the studio, and then Mike would have the newspaper, and he would be like on one side like this. Askin would be on his phone, and Askin would be over here. And they literally did a show back to back without looking at each other. It was the
Yeah.
most bizarre thing. And then like I'd walk in and well, you want genius? And then the next thing Mike would go, like he'd make the face go, what this moron doesn't know X, Y, and Z, whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
it was not
tell
a
him,
good.
oh,
It got off to a bad start because I really I love Steve and he was like a mentor of mine and we got really close and they kind of dispatched him at the end of his career and threw him to evenings and threw me in with Eska, which I didn't want to do, and because I knew that he just couldn't do a show with another person, and so I went into it with a bad attitude, probably, and it didn't get any better. Because and people thought that it was a good show because we hate each other. And at the end of the day, it's not a good show when guys can't blend together because you have to kind of like it's a give and take, and you have to kind of play off somebody and make it entertaining. And he had no concept of that. So anyway, the dynamic changes, and they realize that he can only do a show by himself. So they put us together. It was a hard transition for me at first, being an evening drive guy, but we really had a good show. It lasted briefly for reasons that are well, I just think because of I got
you went
another
to the
job.
rock, you
Yeah,
went to MMR.
yeah, WMMR came in and gave me a job, and the story of the show was like they were paying me evening drive money, and now I was on midday, and they didn't want to give me a new contract. So basically, I was working on an old contract, and I was a free agent. So MMR kind of swooped in, and I didn't have any restrictions at all, and I took their offer, and that's why I left. But we
I
were
was crushed,
we,
by the
I,
way.
I know, and I was crushed too. I didn't really want to leave. It was like the lure of bigger salary was just too much for me to turn down. But
Sure, yeah.
we had set like numbers records for a midday. So, like, why do you think that we had such a great blend?
Well, easy. And you said it about the relationship. The radio is the sum of all parts, right? It's what comes out of your speaker is its own organism, and it's created by the two people and the producer that's there. So it's something I've always told these program directors, it's impossible to understand chemistry, right? Like chemistry just has to happen. And in our case, we had, I thought, an incredible chemistry because it was very brotherly. So the familial aspect I thought worked really well. The fact that, you were like my older brother, we would hang out, have drinks together. There was no competition. Like you and Eskin were competitive, right? Like so you would compete for the same kind of status or stature.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas there was no competition with us. It was just we were having conversations and we genuinely enjoyed one another's company. And, so it wasn't like going to work. It was like hanging out with your buddy, but there's a microphone there. And it was like, I didn't have to feel, I never forget, at that point, I was like leading a show is a big deal when you haven't done it. Like when you're the lead, and then you would be like, listen, do it, do it once a week or do it because you always led. And I just was there and whatever. We'd have our conversations, talk sports, talk life. And what also worked was, we were able to talk about life, right? Really fun conversations. So the audience knew that we were sports heads. So you come to sports radio for sports, but it has to be somewhat entertaining. And so you just can't talk, batting averages every day, right? So, there are times when there's nothing going on, and we would have these conversations about books, movies, whatever, TV shows, drinking, food, all women, like whatever. And it was this guy talk thing, which
Yeah,
you had already mastered.
yeah, because I thought that was the essence of what radio, to be really successful, you just couldn't talk about X and O's. And it's funny because kids come up today and they think because they know sports, they can make a good show. But it's so much more than that at Sports Talk Radio because you're entertaining people for 4 hours. So you got to talk about things that they also relate to and talk about, even if it's something as simple and fundamental, because we share the same thing. We have an Italian heritage. And in Italian heritage, it's very strange because they talk about very strange things. Now we have evolved past the old school Italian, but the old school Italians would get a conversation out of a freaking piece of meat. Like they go to
Look
a
how
butcher's.
beautiful this
Yeah,
veal.
it's a beautiful piece of veal. Like it was fascinate me like that's what a conversation would be. And so we would look back at those kind of things and try to make it into a modern day world. Like this is how we grew up with people that were so simplistic that they were thrilled by a really good cut of meat that the butcher carved out. Right. And so we would turn that into an hour conversation.
It was the greatest. And it's funny. I think back, and sometimes I think it's in our DNA because I find myself, Daddy, come here. I'm talking to the kids. Dad, come over here, Dad. Look at this.
Look at this
Look
piece
at
of
this
meat.
incredible dish I just made. And they're looking at it going, all right, like whatever.
No,
And I also channeling my grandmother, like, why am I saying this
Listen,
dish is beautiful?
you were great. I used to love your stories because you're great. The females in your family were so doting on you.
Yeah,
Grandmother, mother,
yeah.
the whole bit.
And
I
cooking.
didn't have that. Yeah, a cookie, the whole thing. Like they would iron your underwear. Oh my
Oh, yeah.
Anthony, you
You
gotta
should
go
see,
like
like Saturday night.
Anthony doesn't like this, so I have to cook special for him.
Yeah.
Like, it used to crack me up because I used to get punished. Like I used to go, I don't like this sausage because it's got fennel in it. And they go, yeah, well, guess what? You're sitting there going to eat the freaking fennel. Like you're not leaving the table. You go, oh my God, no more fennel for Anthony. It makes him sick, right?
It's true.
It's classic. I don't know the differences from the South Philly and how you got doted on and how I grew up. But we were in the same Italian cocoon, and we would tell these stories. Like I would tell stories about my father was so frugal that he would fuse soap.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
that's the best.
the slivers
The
of
different
soap.
colors. Oh,
The
that's the
slivers of
greatest.
soap. Now, I was a younger school guy. I go, listen, when the soap gets to that thin layer, it has no more essence. I would try to explain to him, like, you can't fuse no essence and no essence to get essence. right?
It's good,
That's
man.
a
It's good.
conversation we would have, right? But like those are
I love
conversations
that whole.
we would
I
have.
used to
And
love
and
using the suit.
here's one of the best shows we ever did. The NCAA tournament was on, and we're on middays, right? So the tournament has the games on midday, and we're in the studio and we're doing a show, and we go like the games are on. Nobody gives a fuck about what we want to say today, right? So let's just talk about the games, and we'll react to the games like we're reacting like a bunch of guys at home. Go, oh, look at this team here. Oh, look at that shot. And it was craziness that we did that for a whole show, right? We turned that into a show.
You know what that show was, Mike? That show was the seedling of the Manning cast. That basically
Yeah, it was.
That's what it was. It was the Manning cast. We had Primos. Primos was in the beginning. I remember calling them. They came up. They dropped Primos off. In fact, Mark Rayfield came in and hung out with us.
He did. The general manager of the station was Mark Rayfield.
He loved it. He was enjoying himself.
Yeah, he did. And he didn't know we were going to do it. And all of a sudden he figured out, well, you know what, this sounds pretty good. so that's the way it rolled. Now, I remember there was just one acrimonious, not really acrimonious, but we went back and forth on it. And it was the T.O. issue. And you hated T.O. and what he did. And I said, the Eagles, how could they not figure out that this insane guy was going to do this? Like, that's the way I looked at it. Like, I took it at a different level. Like, when you hire an insane guy, how do you expect him not to be insane? So that was my beef for the whole thing, right?
Yeah, no, as usual, you looked at it from a really interesting perspective, really from 50,000 feet, which was, I think I was looking at more elemental, like, dude,
it's messing up the team.
You act like a goofy, you ruin the whole season.
Yeah.
What are you doing? You got to act right. But the point is correct. Like, you can't win against an insane person.
You can't. You just can't. So if you're going to take on that risk, then you got to accommodate the risk. And that's where I thought they were wrong. And I remember us going back and forth on it. And it got pretty heated, which was great because we could do that and then, like brothers, at the end of a show, hug. Now, there were a couple things I need to bring up because people remember this because it's brought up to me all the time. And you were working with me during a couple of really interesting times. One is where I got fired. But the first thing was the David Akers thing. Now, we're doing the show together, and I had this acerbic wit about me, and the Daily News comes out when the Eagles win the game, and David Akers, with a pulled hamstring, kicks a 23-yard field goal to win it. Now, you might have thought like he survived the most vivid battle in Afghanistan mountains after he kicked the field goal, right? And so it's like when you said like these news anchors, like they do like a cat in a tree, and it's like Vietnam, right? And like he overplayed, and the picture in the Daily News was him resting his weary head in the bosom of Donovan McNabb, right? And he kicked the 23-yard field goal, okay, with a tweaked hamstring. I thought it was overblown a little bit, right? So we do the show, and I go off on it, and I think Jeremiah Trotter is listening to the show. He calls in about it, and he was trying to stick up for Akers, which I found hard to believe. He's a linebacker, one of the toughest guys ever, and sticking up for Akers. And then somehow it gets translated to Akers that I'm ridiculing him. And he calls into the show. Now, what was your recollection of that exchange?
So remember, I knew those guys really well, right? Because I was also writing for Philadelphia Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So I was embedded. I mean, you remember, Mike, I spent a lot of time behind the scenes with those guys. I was on the sidelines during the game, standing behind Butchie, behind Andy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was writing these series of stories where I was like embedded with them. I was on the plane. I did a lot of stuff with those guys. So I knew those guys well. And so I'll never forget. Oh, this was classic. So Akers calls up, and I love David. Like, it was like whatever. It was what it was. It's not, like, I agree with Mike with kickers, like whatever, kickers or whatever. But the dude was a good dude, whatever. But it was funny because Mikey goes at it. And, hey, listen, Mikey's smart, right? So Mikey's gives him this in a way where he wasn't getting – it was going over his head. And he was getting mad. Oh, my God. And then Mikey's crushing him. Yo, dude, what are you going to do?
No, he says to me, I go, listen, man, I just think you over embellished it. That's all. Like, you
were playing Kicky. You go, would you call him Kicky Boy?
Kicky Boy. But only because he came back at me saying, I'll kick your ass in any sport. Like, he got belligerent about it. Like, I'm just questioning his overreaction in comparison to real football players. Like, he went through hell to kick a field goal where he wasn't done. Like, I thought it was absurd. And he comes flashing at me trying to defend his athletic prowess. And that's where I go, oh, dude, don't go there, right? So, so I came back at him, and it turned out to be an ugly situation to the point where I get a call from his agent, who I know very well. His agent was Gerald Colton. And he calls me, and he starts, firing up at me. And I go, listen, man, it is what it is. I don't think he had to call in. I was legitimate criticism. I thought he overreacted to kicking the field goal where he rested his weary head in Donovan's bosom, right? So, I mean, see that? So that didn't win me any points. I don't know. It's funny because fans look at it like, oh, you're attacking one of our players. I go, he's a kicker. He's not one of your players. He's just like a mercenary guy who gets you 3-1 every now and then.
It's funny though. Your commentary was just spectacular. Like Mike got in trouble one time because he made up a scenario of Jeffrey Lurie and Joe Banner at summer camp.
Yeah. I got suspended for that.
I'll never forget. I'm listening. It was hysterical.
There was a scenario. They went to the summer camp. You were going right here. Wee, and it dripped down through the bunk. I was stupid, and I said some stupid things. But they were camp buddies, and they used to brag about it. And I go, hey, these guys weren't. They went to camp. It wasn't like an athletic camp or anything. It was just like And I was just trying to illustrate the preposterous.
That's how we look at it, man. It wasn't a sports camp.
No, it was like okay, God bless him. He rose to whatever happened. Right.
Shoot arrows or whatever you're doing.
Right. Whatever happened in their life to make you successful. God salute. God bless you. But you go to summer camp together, all of a sudden you parlay that into running the Eagles. I go, okay, well that's fine, but except let me make fun of it a little bit. That's all I tried to do. Right. All right. Now, so here's the last thing I want to talk about. I come in one day and I go, I had been a master of the April Fool's joke. When I was younger.
Oh, that was the greatest.
Yeah. No, when I worked with Steve Fredericks, I duped him into a April Fool's joke where they had Kurt Schilling trade. This is when I was friends with Kurt Schilling. I'm no longer friends with Kurt Schilling, but I duped Steve and everybody else. In fact, Darren, our producer here, was the producer at the time. I said, listen, I want to do the shtick. So I called Schilling. I go, listen, I want to trade you, and it's April Fool's, and at the end we'll reveal it. And he goes, all right. I go, call in at a certain time, and I made the trade sensible. I traded the Cleveland Indians for a return, and I go, Steve, I got this story. I'm working on it. It's going to come to fruition. And so I dangled him for a couple hours. We were still in the show at Philly Rock. And finally, I go outside. I'm talking to Darren, our producer. I go, Darren, listen, I'm just out here.
Philly Rock was the best. I used to love Philly Rock.
I'm just out here to fool Steve that I'm talking to a source, but I'm really talking to you, and I'm about to spring this April Fool's joke on. Right? So that worked perfectly. Schilling calls in. He goes, I just want to thank the people in Philadelphia and blah, 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 blah. And at the end, we drag Steve all the way to the end. We go, and by the way, this trade never happened. April Fool's. And Steve goes, you son of a bitch. He was crazy about it. So, you can't do an April Fool's joke every day because people are onto it. So I waited until I was with you years later. And I had the Phillies trading for Miguel Tejada. Now, I used to do a pretty good Hispanic accent. So I go, listen, dude, I'm going to go outside. You break the news that they traded for Miguel Tejada, and you got Miguel on the line. And it was me outside doing Miguel Tejada voice.
We had traded. Spanish. You speak Spanish well. So you did you completely sold it. It was awesome. That was hysterical.
So we had a blast on the show, and then I don't know. I went to that WMMR.
We played electric football, cuz.
We played electric football. I had an old electric football game my brothers. I brought it in, and we did it on an innocuous day where we playoffs. That's right. We we made one team electric football, which you had no idea. We turned the thing off. It's going. All right, we're doing play-by-play on electric football.
We were saying that the outcome to this, we did it at McDonald's on Street Road, and we set up in the middle of McDonald's, and that the winner of this electric football game was going to be the winners of the Eagles in Tampa, right? And we played it out.
And you couldn't do anything but run a T formation and tuck that little cotton ball in the arm of the ball carrier and just go off tackle and see how far you can go.
Oh, let's go 6 yards!
Yeah. He's headed for the sidelines. Oh, he breaks loose. He could score.
Go Staley.
Yeah, it was classic. Listen, man, I know you got a lot of stuff going. I want to reveal something to the people, because a couple of years ago I thought, I really have a lot of affection for the station that we used to work at, even though it didn't work out at the end, and it was a shame, and there were a lot of people to blame for that. But they were worried about. My only goal when I came to 97.5 The Fanatic was to beat WIP. I'm competitive that way. And I was working in New York with Stephen A. Smith. I go, here's a chance to come back and make a difference. First of all, the first guy having my target is Eskin. But then I want to make the station better than WIP. WIP is tough to beat. They're a legacy station. They carry the Eagles and the Phillies. It's really tough. So that was my only goal. And so I lured you in. I thought that was a byproduct of really making a difference. So when a couple of years ago, we started, it became evident that WIP was just a monster. I proposed to them that you and I do a 5-hour show. And I proposed that Tyrone, who was my producer, do the midday show. You and I would do 5 hours from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock.
I thought
really? Yes. I thought it was a great idea.
You never told me this.
Yeah, I know I never told you this. I went to them. I said, listen, if you want to really make a dent, save this station, here's the best strategy to do it. And I could not believe they weren't receptive to it. So I just wanted to tell you that. So I thought, like, I was willing to sacrifice, like, whatever I was doing in the afternoon to make a really good show, to make the station viable as possible. And I thought that us doing it from 1 to 6 would have done that. And they were so not insightful that they didn't even blink at it. So I just wanted to tell you that.
They didn't take that seriously?
No. And it's a shame. And I just wanted the people to know that, like, when you see the station now, I feel really upset about it. I got there on the ground floor of that station, and we worked to make it a really good station. And look at it. I'm just.
Listen, I said it on the air the other day because we did the All-Star Day, and quite frankly, I started the show. It's not the same. I mean, Mike built the station. I miss Mikey Miss, and it feels empty without him. And I started the show that way because that's exactly how I felt.
And it didn't have to be that way. They like I know a lot of people don't know what's behind the scenes, and maybe one day I'll tell it. I don't know if there's any reason to tell it because it only looks like it's sour grapes for me. But I don't understand what their logic was in not wanting to offer me a contract. That's the only thing. Like, I go, what? Like, what are you gaining by doing that? And it's a shame because I really have an affection for the station because I was there in the ground floor of it, and I want to see it.
I know you felt very connected to it, very almost like it was something you created, which you did.
I get it. They want to save money. They want to do that. I get it that radio's different, and for all of us now, it's not the same. But
I have to tell you, I do miss, and not just to because we're going back in time and we're being wistful, but it was those WIP days were fun. I got to be honest with you. What the essence of this business is. You interact with people on an everyday basis, and that's the essence of it. And you feel talking to people 4 hours a day, you're engaged with it. You get immediate feedback, and that's what I really miss about it. And I love this podcast. Like, I could say anything I want here, and I've tried to open it up and make it really listenable to people and have great guests like yourself.
But like during these exciting times, I really do miss the day-to-day interaction of callers.
Yeah.
That's what really got us going, and going back and forth with callers and point counterpoint and making an argument. That's what really
the love of them. I mean, quite frankly, like I'm a chat. Radio. I always say this: that radio is a warm medium. Writing, which is my first love, is cold. Right? I write, people read. That's it. Radio, it's interactive. It's these conversations, whether it's us or with callers that we've talked to for years, dude. Like, who called, like half the, there's callers that call up and that have called you and I like 20 years ago. And think about that. 20 years ago, they were calling up, and I'm still going, oh my God, love you, man, and this shit.
I know, and there are callers like I've lost track of a couple of people who used to call a lot.
Keith from West Oak Lane, man.
Keith from West Oak Lane's great. Like I don't know, Bob used to be a caller. I remember Bob, Southern Bob. I have a feeling that Bob passed away because I tried to text him and I didn't get a reply. But all the guys that have been with us for so long, Bernie, Bernie hopefully is still hanging in there, and I missed keeping up with those guys. They become part of your life, and I miss being able to look at you and put a cigar in my mouth and go, "Oh, I know about making a restaurant. Well, I don't know how to make a restaurant. I sit down and order the meal. Yeah, I put the cigar in my mouth." And we would do Goodfellas, and the greatest movie that we ever bonded with was The Public Enemy's Village, where we just throw lines at each other out of the blue. The
Gargusos never made a tough
Anyway, the guy coming out of the OTB, what are you doing? I'm waiting for what? Wait for work. Listen, Charlie, I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm down 35% of my business. You creep, like stuff like that.
We're going to be erasing this in Phoenix.
All right, listen, man. I appreciate you spending some time with us. I can't thank you enough. I love you. Continued success. Keep rocking it down there, man. And listen, it's been a long time since we got together and had a beer and a cigar.
Yeah, we got to do that. We got to see the kids, man. The kids.
I know. It's amazing because Anthony and I worked together. You were childless, frankly, and all of a sudden, if there's anybody that should have had two boys, it's you. And you're living now with two boys, and little Mas is a great baseball player. Little Anthony's a football player, and you're living life like right through them. That's a beautiful thing, and you're so involved in their life, man. It's great.
Anthony, I want to say hello to you. Anthony. Get over here. Come on, Dad. Come here for a second. Hurry up. I gotta go. Hey, Uncle Mike. Uncle Mike.
Come here, Dad. Now that's the great indication because people go, why do you call your son's dad? They don't know in an Italian family, fathers call their kids dad. You see it in casino. How many pancakes you gonna have, Dad? Right? When Pesci says to his kid, right? Casino.
I call my daughter's dad. Come here, Dad. Where you go, Dad?
I don't know what it is in Italian families. The Italian fathers say Dad. Where's Anthony? Where is he? Come on, Ed. Yo, Ed, what's up?
Hi.
What are you doing?
Yo, Uncle Mike.
Hi.
I like the hair, brother. Keep it like that. That's a good look.
Thank you.
All right, brother.
What size sneaker you wearing?
13.
Oh, Christ almighty. 13. Oh.
Show me.
So 13. How old are you, Ed, these days?
13.
You're 13 wearing a 13 sneaker? You're like Shaq, for Christ's sake. Oh, man, listen. Best of luck to you. That's a monster kid.
So you're telling me you're 13 years old now? Where's that from?
Oh, that's from Midnight Run.
Yeah.
The line is, are you in the 8th grade now?
You're in the 8th grade?
Are you in the 8th grade now?
Nah, sweetheart. I can't, sweetheart.
I can't, sweetheart. I can't, sweetheart.
The greatest.
Where's Massimo? Moss!
Oh, you got little Moss, the baseball player. I still want to get that kid in the Mikey Lab.
Massimo!
That kid in the Mikey Lab, baseball. Let's go. Yeah. Bring him over to the Mikey Lab. Yo,
come here. Where's he at?
This is by far the best part of the podcast, easily. It's why you both know that. This is fantastic.
Listen, I think we got to show.
Come on, Moss.
It's always better unfiltered. Yo, Dad.
Yo, Dad. Let's go. I got a beautiful piece of meat over here.
And by the way,
look at this piece of meat.
I'm coaching his basketball team.
Oh, you get basketball now?
Yeah. So Moss is, so he thinks he's Steph, pull up threes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, he's the point guard. So he's taller than everybody, but I make him the point guard. Come here, Dad. He plays the whole game. Dad, listen, I need you to do this, man.
That's the best.
Anyway.
All right.
Love you guys, man.
Love you too, man. Hey, yeah, take care, and we'll talk. Thanks, brother. All right, that's the great Anthony Gargano joining us today. See, this is why I didn't want to do any other thing on this podcast except go straight into the interview. Darren, what do you think? How did that work out?
Yeah, it was great. I laughed for 60 minutes. The stories are great. And, I mentioned this briefly, but, that's why you two worked in radio, because you got to share. To have a partner in radio, there's two things. You can't argue with malice, and you got to share a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And that's, you guys had that all the way.
We had a lot of fun working together. All right, so that's the Mike Missanelli podcast for today. Now, Thursday, we'll get deeper into the game. Obviously, they're playing the New York Giants. I got to be honest with you. I'm talking to you on a Tuesday. I have no fear about this game whatsoever. There's no way the Giants play two good games in a row like they did. So 7.5-point favorite. The Eagles, I think, win by double digits in this game. We'll talk about it. We'll analyze it coming up Friday. We'll do the podcast Fridays. We go right into the weekend as the Eagles play the Giants on a Saturday night game. And, of course, we'll do the post-game show as well, Seth Joyner and Derek Gunn. So everybody have a great rest of the night, great rest of the weekend. I hope you enjoyed this on the Mike Missanelli podcast. You can subscribe for free. Just go to wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, Google. Subscribe for free. It'll come right to you. We do it twice a week, and we have a lot of fun. You can reach me on Twitter, MikeMiss25. You can email me, mike@mikemiss.com. Check out my website, mikemiss.com. I forgot I got a winery called Natali Vineyards where you get some great wines, and we'll try to do a show there one of these days at Natali Vineyards. And if you're interested in the children's book, I think it's listen, I'm proud of the children's book. I know it's not a big selling book, but whatever is sold, 20% will go to animal shelters. I feel that deeply about it. And it's a children's book called The Adventures of Shima and Sheba, based on my dog and growing up as a dog, but really growing up as a kid and learning some lessons when you're a little kid. It's for kids that just learn to read, or parents who can read to them and read them a bedtime story as they go to sleep. So everybody have a great rest of the evening. Anything else, Darren? Did we forget anything? Are we good?
No, we're good. Paul Hembekides, ESPN, will join us on Friday.
Yes, we'll have Hembo on Friday. The Hembo stats coming into this game, which normally Hembo's got the Steelers, and he's an Eagle fan. So the stats he's going to give you, going to favor the Eagles. You want to look forward to that on Friday when we do the pre-game show on the Mike Missanelli podcast on Friday. Everybody have a great rest of the night. It's Mike Miss. Have fun. I'm out.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.